Hey friends, I didn't learn a new phrase today, but I garnered an appreciation for a phrase today. And I'll talk about it because it's something that I've honestly talked about a lot. It has to do with an aspect of sort of looking at our own mental conditioning, breaking down our mental patterning, frustrating our own habits so that we can develop new, hopefully, more functional habits, more optimized habits. And the phrase, I was watching John Vervaeke, who, if you've listened to any of my recent posts, you've been hearing me basically recap whatever I heard him say most recently. That's basically been my post for the last week or so. John Vervaeke has a series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It continues to just deliver a remarkable, it's like seeing the spiritual practice of Buddhism and the art of Qigong, Tai Chi, and the world of Western philosophy, and including some Eastern philosophy, all just brought into this really beautiful, elegant kind of, his understanding of all these things is so great, and so he's able to take aspects of them, kind of go whole hog into each aspect, but then also come back and see kind of how they relate and just paint a really beautiful picture. Ultimately, I think, I'm probably like less than a fifth of the way through, but ultimately moving in the direction of how human beings create meaning, what it means to create meaning, and why our culture is sort of at a place where a lot of people are having trouble creating meaning. Anyway, the phrase he used to talk about moving from, I talk about it as like there's a pattern that's kind of strapped to our face, right? We have this, our patterning, if we're operating unconsciously out of a particular psychological, emotional pattern, whatever, habitual pattern, then it's kind of like something that's strapped to our face and we can't see it because we're seeing through it. And the process of stopping that, of deconstructing that pattern, or at least of temporarily objectifying it so that we can stop looking through it, is to peel it off. And there are various practices, various ways of doing this, and it sort of only makes sense to go into those various ways in the context of an actual example. But the process is you peel the layer off, and now all of a sudden you're not looking through it anymore, you're looking at it, and we're seeing our compulsive behavior rather than just compulsively behaving. And that's kind of just the first step. Then, of course, we can start to decide, is this behavior the right behavior? Is it what I really want to be doing? Is it motivated by programming or by emotional habits or age-old emotional experiences, potentially, traumatic experiences or early success experiences that might make it seem like this is the only possible way for me to operate? Is that true? What are my other options? What else might my life look like if I could act differently? And what John Vervaeke calls that is a transparency to opacity shift. So in other words, we take something that is transparent to us, like the lenses on a pair of glasses, or like our emotional, like our emotional pattern becomes like the lenses on a pair of glasses. We're looking through them and by means of them. We're seeing what we're seeing because of the way the pattern affects our vision. And vision is just a metaphor, right? This is obviously all of our behavior, all of our senses, even within just our mind. The pattern determines what I see as in its transparent state, and then I turn that into something opaque because now I'm looking at it. Now I'm seeing what it is. I'm not seeing the world through it. I'm seeing it. And I love that image of a transparency to opacity shift, because it so elegantly captures the visual feeling of looking through something to looking at something. And, you know, his whole point is that we can do this many, many times. Almost anything in our experience, any pattern of behavior, anything that's interior to our mind, interior to our psyche, or exterior to us, we can shift the way we perceive it. We can shift it from being something that is the way it is, and we see the world through the way it is, quote unquote. It's not really the way it is, it's just the way we see the way it is. And we can turn that into something that we can actually observe and critique and decide whether or not to employ as a mode of seeing, or as a mode of engaging, mode of behaving. A lot of times this is almost the most true with behavior, because behavior is so ingrained. The way we act, our personality, you know, in our culture, our personality is such a marquee aspect of who we are. And we tend to, well, I don't know. I don't want to overgeneralize. I guess whenever I hear myself starting to generalize about the way all people do everything, I start to there's a little voice that goes, wait, let's not say that. That might not be true. What if I just speak from my own point of view and see if people resonate? But my experience of my personality is I sort of am attached to what I think my personality is. And I can say that as somebody who's done a lot of reflection and a lot of transparency to opacity shifting with aspects of my personality. But if you told me that someone met me and thought that based on my personality I was an asshole, I would be hurt. I'd be like, what? They're wrong. That's not true. I'm not an asshole. I'm a great guy, and here's why. And I'd start to defend my personality. Why? If all of it is a collection of compulsive behaviors that, in the best scenario, are effective at leading you through life, but might still be unexamined and therefore pretty much a form of enslavement. You know, I can be enslaved to very effective behavior. I can be enslaved in a condition of being a very effective operator in the world on any number of levels, and I'm still not 1 inch closer to spiritual freedom. I'm not 1 inch closer to the ground of being, or the reality that's prior to and beyond the world. I'm just a very effective operator in the world, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just very effective, right? Like I wish that I had that problem sometimes. There's all kinds of levels of my life where I could be like, wish I could just be really unconsciously effective in that area of my life, because what I am is really consciously incompetent in that area of my life. Be that as it may, it's interesting to look at our personality as something that is essentially arbitrary, and it's almost like our personality is a form of slavery. Like, if we have a personality, then most likely there's a suite of behaviors and thoughts and modes of thinking that we engage in compulsively. That's why people think we have a person. That's what personality is. It's a consistent way of behaving that creates a certain kind of persona, impression, type of response from other people, or at least a kind of consistent picture for other people. That's what a personality is. A personality is really a form of enslavement. And if we got completely free, it's not that we would cease to have a personality. It's just that we could choose to have almost any personality we wanted to, and we could probably change it up like on a dime. Like we could just go from having a certain set of thoughts and behaviors to having a completely different set of thoughts and behaviors based on the appropriateness of the moment, based on the context, based on what seemed like it would be most effective in this situation. And the notion that we would be attached to our personality and defend it, be offended by someone critiquing it or not liking it or unjustly attacking it would be insane, because it's like, well, it's not a real thing. It's a bunch of compulsive stuff that's a bunch of programming that I could just as easily peel off and be like, oh, is this helpful? Is it not helpful? What shall I do now that I can see it? And it's, look, there's so many deep layers of this. One of the experiences that I've had over the years of doing practices like this consistently is that you start to realize there's almost no bottom to this. When the Buddhists talk about there is no self, they mean it. Like, there's no self. You can keep digging back layers of this stuff. And maybe you do get to a point where it's like, well, that's the last layer. And what's prior to that, right? The kind of pure conscious witness. But I guess my point is actually still more in those previous stages of reflection and insight, where this idea that we take something that's transparent and turn it into something that's opaque, in that it takes on contour. We're looking at it now. It doesn't just mist by us as the air we're looking through as we see something else. The way light refracts into our eyeballs and creates the pictures that it creates, we actually get to go, wait, I see it. I see this thing now. And, I guess I started this post thinking that I was just going to talk about that image or that way of describing the process. And as you can probably tell, it's inspiring to me to think about that. It's inspiring to me to observe what's going on and to, connect with the true nature of our personality, which is compulsion, and clock that as a step on the way towards letting go of any defense of that, any need for it to be good, for it to be right. Right? Doesn't mean I'm not going to stand up and defend what I think is right, but maybe if I'm not attached to being right or the way I am being right, I can do a much better job of that. So that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.